Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, which you can hear, see, view, watch, contribute, interact with Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Those time zones always screw me up. Do they screw you up too? They always screw me up. 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, Monday through Friday. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. You can find me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, Justin Fensterman steps in. We have about an hour-long show every day. There's no exact time limit. Sometimes it's 48 minutes. Sometimes it's 104. We're shooting for about an hour. You can watch us live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork or on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. Both of those spots, if you're watching live, you can ask questions. You can leave comments. We'll address throughout the show. We'll do that again today. You can also catch us by going to FantasyGuru.com, clicking that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. Find this show as well as the other shows that we have on the network. Armando Mariscal, who will be our guest today. You can find his Mind of Marsal podcast there as well. You can always type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your local podcast network as well. It is a Tuesday, and that is what we're doing today, Tuesday. Again, I'm Ray Flowers of FG. Follow me on the social medias at the Ray Flowers. Here on the show today, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to talk about the big trade. The NBA has infiltrated the NHL. What do I mean? We'll talk about the Jets adding Davante Adams, the big trade, the trade that shocked the nation. Well, it's something to talk about at least. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Thursday night football, the Jets and the Bills. The Jets lost a football game. The season's spiraling out of control. They made a move to get Adams. We'll talk about the game last night as well. All the players on both sides that you need to know about. We'll also talk the art of the trade a little bit. It's kind of that really hot season now where the NFL is trading. So that's going to spur people, I think, in the fantasy space to trade. So we'll talk a little bit more about the right way to do it, because I still see people asking questions and not necessarily the right mindset. So we'll talk about clearing up that mindset. About 25, 30 minutes from now, we'll visit with Armando Mariscal. He comes on every Tuesday to talk the waiver wire with us. We'll talk Drake Maye, Ray Davis, Sean Tucker, Isaac Guerendo, Kamani Vidal. Did you handcuff your running backs? I know a lot of you didn't. You should have. Ty Chandler, Trey Tucker, and DJ Turner with the Raiders now. Number 2 and 3 receivers on that team. Romeo Dobbs, Demario Douglas, and Hunter Henry. So lots to talk about on the show today. So the big trade, and you probably have already heard it, unless you're just tuning in because this is your first opportunity to get involved with fantasy sports on this Tuesday. And if it is, appreciate you taking your time to spend with us. 7 days after the Jets fired their head coach, and less than 24 hours after a primetime Monday Night Football loss to the Bills, the Jets have acquired Davante Adams from the Raiders. In Rappaport, it's been reported. It's happening. They'll get a conditional third-round pick due to the Raiders in exchange for Adams. The third-round pick can become a second-round pick if, like, Davante Adams is second-team All-Pro or the Jets make the Super Bowl, something like that. So it could become a second-round pick, but it's at least going to be a third-round pick. The Jets are also taking on all the salaries, so the Raiders aren't covering any of the salaries. So this is just a straight, here's a third-round pick for Davante Adams. If he does really well and our team does well, you get a second-round pick out of it. What am I talking about with the NBA connection here? The NBA is known for super teams, right? And basically the players all get together and they in the offseason and they say, we're all going to go play for this team or that team. And then 3 superstars end up on the same team. And they make the finals, and here we go. This is not really good for the sport. Maybe it's good for the sport because it's a New York team and all that. Jeff Manns and I have talked about this a lot. I think unless you're a Jets fan, you're just freaking tired of Aaron Rodgers. It's just, and the Jets are on national television for every game, over and over and over and over and over and over, like they're the only team in football. So, there's that. But this is not good where, a player signs a contract with the team and things change. They got rid of Derek Carr. I get that. Davante Adams. I understand that. But you sign a contract with the team and, you basically pout your way out of town. And not only do you pout your way out of town, you pout your way out to working back with your Hall of Fame quarterback that led you to get the massive contract that you signed with the Raiders. okay. I mean, okay. Again, I think it's bad for the sport when players decide they're not playing anymore, which is kind of, I think, what we're hearing with Davante Adams. He basically just said, "I'm not playing anymore with the Raiders." When a player can say, "Look, I want to trade and I want to go to one of these 3 teams," and the trade it happens, the team says, "Okay, sure, let's do it." Now you got to have the teams paying. All the other teams in the NFL could have made a bid here. The Bills, a lot of people are talking about the Bills as a potential landing spot for Davante Adams. We'll get all the reports here over the next couple of days as to who was, or maybe weeks or months, who was involved, what they offered, all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is Adams forced his way out of Raiderland. He basically wanted to play for like 2 teams, and he ended up on one of those 2 teams. He ended up with the Jets. And again, it's not good for football because you shouldn't have players dictating. If players want to do that, then players should just sign one-year contracts. And they're not doing that. I've been very vocal about this in all sports. If a player, I'm not giving you an opt out of your contract. We talk about this with baseball all the time. Not doing it. You want to be here or you don't. If you don't want to be here, I don't care. I'm not signing. I'm not giving you an opt out. And if you're a player and you're telling me that you're not going to play unless A, B, and C happen, you could sit on the sidelines, man. I ain't paying you. I'm a billionaire. You want to be a jackass? I'll tell everyone you're a jackass. I'll tell the fan base. I'll tell everyone. I'll have a press conference. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to be here. We're not giving into this extortion. That's how I'd handle it. Maybe that's too far. But the Jets get their guy. And we'll talk all about the Bills and the Jets here moving forward. We'll also talk again with Armando Mariscal in about 20 minutes or so about the Raiders and what the after effect there is the Raiders, because now their offense is woof. They're going to need Jacoby Myers back really badly. But Adams goes to the Jets. Adams, and this is why it's been so difficult to answer all the questions people have had over the last couple of weeks with Davante Adams. Do I trade for Adams? Do I have Adams? Do I trade him away? And why we said all along, look, what I know now is that he's going to the Jets to work with a guy who he's made a lot of Adams' case for being in the Hall of Fame is Aaron Rodgers. A lot of Rodgers' case for the Hall of Fame is Adams, right? Okay, so this is going to work. It would be a shock if it didn't. Adams is a wide receiver 1. We'll talk more about Garrett Wilson here in a few minutes. But Adams is a wide receiver 1. So nothing really changed with him. If anything, it gets better from where it was at the Raiders. And now we'll see, where is his leg at? No one really knows if the hamstring injury, it's real. Let's say for real. Let's not say he's a liar. Let's say it's a real injury, but no one knows how severe it is. What I did see this morning being reported, who was it? Let's see here. Diana Rossini reported that Adams is already in New York. I don't know. So maybe he plays this week. We'll see. But we'll talk about that in a second. Really, really interesting. We'll see. I'm getting information here on another situation that's kind of breaking from one of our producers, Phil Backert, who writes for us. He does the IDP work over at fantasyguru.com. If you see that work, you know how good Phil is. He's also our producer on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio on the Elite Sports Show Monday through Friday from 3 to 6. Jeff Manns has that show Monday through Friday. I'm on every Wednesday from 3 to 6. We got a breaking story. Maybe I'll got a little bit more information to share. We'll see when I can get some confirmation on that from Phil. But that's the situation with Davante Adams. Now let's go to last night's football game. This was a game, obviously, that had huge ramifications. The Bills moved to 4-2. The Jets fall to 2-4. The Bills win this game 23-20. It was a strong first half and a crappy second half, missed kicks, all that kind of stuff. Let's go through some of the players here. At the end of the day, Josh Allen killed it last night. He had 3 touchdowns, one of them rushing. He was 19 for 25 as a passer, threw for 215 yards. Didn't have big yardage numbers, 215 passing, 18 rushing. But the game was won by Josh Allen, and he scored 3 touchdowns. And there he is in the fantasy space. And just more of the same for Josh Allen. And, it's interesting. You get all the questions about Josh Allen. He went 9 for 30 last week or last game, and everyone's panicked. Got a significant amount of do I start Josh Allen questions this week. Should have started Josh Allen this week. You should start Josh Allen every week. It's not even a question. He starts every week. He had 3 touchdowns last night. Now, this situation, again, I mentioned this earlier. As the weeks go on, the importance of handcuffing your running backs, whether you believe it or not, has got to smack you square in the face. And it's a broken record for those people that follow us at fantasyguru.com who basically espouse a handcuff model. If you follow it, you're in great shape. If you had Cook, you got Davis, right? If you had J.K. Dobbins, you got Vidal. If you had CMC, you got Mason. If you had Mason, you got Guerendo. You know how these things go. But last night, Ray Davis played. And not only did he play, James Cook was out with that toe issue, which was a little surprising. And as we told people in Discord over at fantasyguru.com, if you're going to wait for Shakir or for Cook, you have a pivot. Obviously, problem solved. If you had Cook and Davis, this problem is solved. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to panic. You don't have to run to the waiver wire and see if you can get, Mike Williams off the waiver. Just play your backup running back, Ray Davis. Ray Davis goes out, 20 carries for 97 yards, caught 3 passes for 55 yards, had as big a volume as Cook ever has, was as productive as Cook ever is, was a foot away from having a touchdown that went to Josh Allen later. So this was a strong effort by Ray Davis. And there was some, concern about Ray Davis or Ty Johnson in the backfield, like how would this play out? Well, at the end of the day, last night, it was all Ray Davis, 40 snaps to 24 for Johnson. Johnson only had 4 touches. Davis was up to 23. Like, this was Ray Davis's backfield last night. And you saw last night the power, the speed, the ability to catch passes. Strong effort from Davis. It's unclear if Cook will play in the next game for the Bills or not. So you might get another game of Davis being the lead back here. This is not a changing of the guard. Once Cook is healthy, he's back out there. But this is why you handcuff your running backs. We'll talk with Ray Davis and his value with Armando Mariscal. What do you do if he's on the open market? We'll discuss that in a few minutes. Dalton Kincaid had a nice game. And, 6 catches for 51 yards on 7 targets was a nice game. And there's not many times we're getting 11 points in a PPR setup from tight ends this year. So this is a good effort. If he scores 11 points every week, we'll be okay with that, especially given the way that the position has gone this year. Did you hope he gets more than that? Yeah. And then you look at Dawson Knox, and Dawson Knox had a touchdown. He had 1 target, and it was a touchdown. And it's like, okay, 6 for 51 or 7 for 53 or 7 for 63 in a touchdown. It's a huge difference. Dawson Knox is going to continue to be involved. We know that. At the same time, how many snaps did Dawson Knox play last night? Dawson Knox played 41 to 54, so they played similar-ish. 24 routes run for Kincaid, 14 for Knox. Knox, again, only had that 1 target and ended up being the touchdown. So Knox is not useful. We all know that. Kincaid had a solid effort. It would have been nice to see that touchdown go his way. We'll still take the effort there. That's a big effort for Kincaid to this point. And, as we go through the Bills here, it smacks you right in the face that, and I saw someone jokingly say this on Twitter last night, the Bills' plan at wide receiver this year was to be the Chiefs of 2023. Like, where, Samuel, Coleman, Shakir, Hollins. Now, Shakir is, I think, a weekly play. Last night, coming back from an ankle injury, he was a little bit of a surprise addition to the roster. It was really unclear if he was going to play. He played 25 snaps out of 68, so he did not see the field hardly at all. Both Hollins and Coleman were on the field for over 40 snaps. So it was a heavy rotation last night with the Bills receivers. Shakir barely played relative to normal. He played way less. I mean, what was it? 11 personnel, he played like 90% of the – what's the number? For 11 personnel, he played 80% of the snaps coming in. Last night in 11 personnel, he didn't play half the snaps. So he was clearly managed. He was active and he was out there, which was good, but he didn't do anything. He had 2 targets, caught 2 passes for 19 yards. He should be 5 for 50 a week, right? He should be a 10-point-a-week PPR guy. We've seen him be that guy already with the potential to be more. But last night, as we discussed heading into the game last night, he had the high ceiling, he had the low floor, and it was what's going to happen. Didn't get in the end zone, didn't get the volume, didn't play much. I don't think this impacts his rest of the season outlook. Don't take Shakir and drop him, which I know we're going to get drop questions for Shakir. Don't do it. He's coming back from an injury, and he played 55% of the snaps compared to the other top receivers on this team. He just wasn't ready to take on a full snap count. Let's hope that his ankle gets better, and let's hope he's back to playing 80% of the snaps. And with that, again, he'll get 6-7 targets. He'll catch 5-6 passes, and we'll be plenty happy with Khalil Shakir as our 3rd wide receiver. Just didn't happen last night. Now, with it not happening last night, we, the Bills, I don't know why I said we. I'm not a Bill guy. I've never been a Bill guy. I'm not from New York. But Keon Coleman, 4 targets, 3 catches, 26 yards. Let me take a sip of water. Keon Coleman at least didn't get hit in the head with any passes last night. Did I miss that? I don't think he did, right? There's a lot put on the shoulders of a youngster when they enter the NFL. And in the case of Coleman, it's not just, hey, man, you got skills and talents. It's that we need you to be the guy, and he's just not there yet. Maybe one day he will be. He's just not there yet. And, 3 catches for 26 yards. Unfortunately, 6 fantasy points. It's about all we're getting from Coleman at this point. He either gets a touchdown and gets us 10 or he gets us 4 points. Like, that's just – saw that again last night. Again, looking at the snap counts of the Bills, he was only 2 snaps behind Mac Hollins for the top amongst the wide receivers, and he ran the most routes on the team in any position. He's just not a volume performer, and I think we all know that at this point. He's a rough hold at this point. I mean, it's just you keep waiting for it to happen, and maybe it's only been 6 games, right? Maybe it still happens in the second half of the year, but right now with injuries and buys, only 2 teams on bye this week, but with bye weeks and injuries, Keke Coleman's a really rough hold unless you have deep benches or it's a very deep league. He's just what we saw last night is kind of the ceiling. Again, unless he gets a random touchdown. Next up is Curtis Samuel. Now, this is vexing because Samuel was the addition, right? I mean, they brought in Mac Hollins, they brought in Marcus Valdez-Scantling, but Samuel was the addition. And Samuel has had moments where he has been a borderline ace in the fantasy space, right? Getting 2 or 3 carries a week, catching 5 or 6 passes a week, backfield, spread out wide, working in the slot, like all over the field, kind of a Deebo Samuel Jr. And with a team in the Bills that really could use that boost at the wide receiver position, he continues to just muddle along. And we've talked a lot about his foot injury. And, last night, 4 targets, 3 catches for 44 yards. He only played 25 snaps. He played the same number of snaps as Shakir did. He ran fewer routes than Shakir did. Like, is he still just hurt? And it's just not. But this is, it was very reasonable coming into the season to say 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 6 to 8 touchdowns for Samuel is doable. That guy has not been available all year. Where is it? On a team that desperately – we're running MVS and Mac Hollins out there. These guys are just running wind sprints. Like, come on. But Curtis Samuel, same thing. Looks could be deceiving. Has not happened for him at this point. Nothing we saw last night suggests it's going to happen the next game for him either. Again, another guy that it's very difficult to even have on your roster at this point. By the way, Mac Hollins, 2 targets, both end zone targets and a touchdown. So go Mac Hollins, Sandro Anello's favorite player. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the things on the other side of action here. Aaron Rodgers threw for 294, 2 and an interception. The interception on the last pass to Mike Williams, he basically blamed Mike Williams in the press. Real stand-up guy, Aaron Rodgers, said it was Mike Williams' fault. I guess Williams ran the wrong route. Got no coverage from his quarterback. His quarterback just said he blew it. Nice. So the pick wasn't really his fault. 52 of those yards and a touchdown weren't really Aaron Rodgers doing it. It was a Hail Mary pass at the end of the first half. He chucked it up. Alan Lazard caught it. So really, Aaron Rodgers threw for 240 yards and a touchdown last night. Yeah. Again, things will change or should change dramatically with the addition of Davante Adams. But let's look directly at this team. Rodgers goes, and by the way, when you talk about Rodgers now, having Bree Hall in the backfield, who's a star, having Davante Adams, who's a star, and having Garrett Wilson, who's may not be a star, but is a strong support piece, that trio of wide receiver, running back is about unmatched in the NFL. It's pretty damn close to being at the top of the heap, right? Aaron Rodgers is a guy that goes from being quarterback 19, now he's quarterback 10. Like, that's possible, pending the volume that they want to throw the ball versus run the ball. But Rodgers takes a big step up with that addition of Adams. In the case of Garrett Wilson, he takes a step down. Now, the thing that's been keeping Garrett Wilson afloat, and last night was a little bit different because he saw 10 targets, but he caught 8 of them for 107 yards and a touchdown. He has been basically a volume guy. He's got there. He's producing the big numbers on a weekly basis because Aaron Rodgers is throwing him the ball over and over and over and over. Is he going to keep getting double-digit targets with Davante Adams in town? Hard to think the answer to that's yes. He's not going to. And this dings Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson now becomes a wide receiver 2 in the fantasy space. Still play him every week, all that kind of stuff. There is a possibility that this target tree becomes very narrow and that it's 11 targets a week to Adams and it's 9 a week to Wilson. Like, that's possible. So pending the touchdown piece, it is possible that both Adams and Wilson are wide receiver 1s the rest of the way. Smart way to play it is to look at Wilson as a wide receiver 2. Doesn't matter anyway because, you're not going to trade him at this point, I don't think. And you're not going to be acquiring him at this point, I would think either. I think you just drafted him and you got him, right? So whether he's wide receiver 7 or wide receiver 17, you got him. But he takes obviously a little bit of a step down because you have to assume that as soon as Davante Adams is out there, he's the number one receiver getting those double-digit looks on a weekly basis. And I do think that's very reasonable. So Wilson becomes that too. Allen Lazard, who had the fortunate 52-yard Hail Mary touchdown, caught 6 balls for 114 yards and a touchdown. I'll come back to Bree Hall. I know it says they're on the list, but I'm on a roll with wide receivers. Allen Lazard goes from somebody that you're starting, and it's like, all right, I'll start Allen Lazard. And he pops off because he gets in the end zone. Is he usable? I mean, when 4 teams are on a bye, maybe. When you've got an injury, maybe. But how many wide receiver 3s on teams are usable? I mean, Lazard's going to go from 7 targets a week to 4. You just can't. So Allen Lazard has been terrific. He's buoyed offenses around the world because this game of fantasy football is played around the world. He's buoyed offenses around the world, but the fact is that he's just moving forward, right? Mike Williams is now a paperweight. Like Mike Williams got no value at all with this team. He didn't catch any of the 3 targets last night. We heard he ran the wrong route. Quarterback threw him under the bus publicly. Do they trade him? It's kind of surprising. And I saw some people saying this. I wonder why the Raiders didn't say, give us Mike Williams back and try to work something out there with the deal. Do the Jets trade Mike Williams? Do they keep him as a depth piece just in case? Because Mike Williams is, despite not doing anything to this point, is a tremendous talent. We all know that. His ability to high point footballs and make those big plays that win games is elite. Staying on the field and consistent is not his forte. But it'll be very interesting to see because there's a scenario now where Mike Williams is running 9 routes, playing 9 snaps a week. Like is that what's going to happen with Mike Williams? So we'll see if he does indeed get traded or not. Ty Conklin goes from, all right, he's a guy who can spot start as a tight end 1 to now we're not starting Ty Conklin again. It's just a trickle down effect, right? Like at the top of the list, we're adding a new guy that's getting 10 targets a week. So unless we're now throwing the ball 45 times a game, which they're not going to throw the ball 45 times a game, everyone else has to take a hit. And Ty Conklin is now just a safety valve. He was at anyway last night. He caught 2 balls for 10 yards. Rucker caught 2 balls for 7 yards. The tight ends had 6 targets. It's reasonable to think the tight ends can get 6 targets a game moving forward. That's reasonable. But if it's split amongst 2 guys, obviously neither one is usable. And those spike weeks that we've seen a couple of times from Conklin, barring an injury to somebody else in the receiving corps, just no. So Ty Conklin is now where he rightfully should be as a tight end 2, a desperation streamer kind of play. Going back to the running back position, again, we're visiting with Armando Mariscal. We'll talk waivers here in a few minutes. I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. There was a change. Like they demoted Nathaniel Hackett, and the question was, how is the offense going to operate now? Because we've seen, as we have said all along at FantasyGuru.com, which is in opposition to what a lot of other places have said. I know that. But as we have said all along at FantasyGuru.com, the deployment of the guys in the backfield has been wrong. Bree Hall is a star in this league. Braylon Allen, as talented as he is and as productive as he has been, as exciting a couple of the plays he's had this year have been in his rookie season, all those things. Braylon Allen should not be seeing the ball as much as Bree Hall, period. Period. That was a coaching mistake by the Jets. What did they do last night? They rectified that, and they put things back right. So now your first-round pick, Bree Hall, looks like a first-round pick again. Braylon Allen played 12 snaps, ran 4 routes. Was barely on the field last night. Bree Hall, 55 snaps, 30 routes. That's the way it should be. And that's the way I kind of anticipate it's going to be moving forward. So Hall had 18 carries for 113 yards, 5 catches for 56 yards. Can't expect 23 touches, of course. It's too much on a consistent basis. But this is a reminder of why all the people for the last month and a half have been Braylon Allen truthers, and all the idiots that advise people like you to say that Braylon Allen was taking over the backfield, or it was going to be a timeshare, or that Bree Hall was a nobody, because that's ridiculous. And we said it all along, every step of the way, every week at FantasyGuru.com. This is Bree Hall. If it's not Bree Hall, the coaching staff are morons. We're changing up who's calling plays and how the offense runs. We're getting rid of our head coach. Bree Hall, these changes get made. Bree Hall gets the ball 20 times a week. Guess what? He's good. He should continue at that level of volume the rest of the way in terms of I'm going to say 18 to 20 touches a week. And Braylon Allen's going to be touching at 5. Braylon Allen is a terrific handcuff to Bree Hall. Braylon Allen's now going to get dropped because he's not involved. That's how this is going to go. If you have Bree Hall and you don't have Braylon Allen, the moment he gets dropped, add Braylon Allen into your team. Because if Bree Hall gets hurt, like we'll talk about with Armando Mariscal in a few minutes, Braylon Allen then steps into Bree Hall's role. He's now touching the ball 18 times a week, and he's a running back 1 in this offense. So keep that in mind with Braylon Allen. Before we talk waivers with Armando, just a note here on the art of the trade, and I continue to get questions, and I just wanted to said this a lot. We've talked about it a lot, but just a refresher course. It's, 6 weeks in, 7 weeks into the season now. We're starting week 7, the NFL. People will come to me and they'll say, is it worth trading for this guy? Or should I trade this guy away? And just so everyone, we're on the same page, you got to be clear on that, right? I need to know what the trade is. I can't just say, should I trade Garrett Wilson? Sure. What's the league setup? What's your receiving core look like? What's the trade? You need the information there. So always remember that when you're asking a question about should I trade for or trade. And even when you say, should I trade Garrett Wilson for James Cook? Just throwing it out there. Well, I need to know what your running backs are and your wide receivers are. And is it a PPR league? I need to know this information to help answer the question. But more directly for you, I wanted to say this because people will say to me, look, let's say Davante Adams. I want Davante Adams now. He's at the Jets. He's going to be a top 3 wide receiver the rest of the way. I want Davante Adams. What do I trade for him? I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you what I would offer for Davante Adams, but it doesn't matter what I would offer for Davante Adams. It doesn't matter what you would offer for Davante Adams. It only matters what the other team would offer for Davante Adams, whoever has Davante Adams. So what you do is you say, I want Davante Adams. Okay, we go to the team that has Davante Adams right now, and we look at their roster. If their starting quarterback is Bo Nix, and I've got Jaden Daniels, and I've got Josh Allen, we got a deal, right? Here's Jaden Daniels. You give me Davante Adams, boom, we're done. If you go to this team, though, and they have Josh Allen, they don't need a quarterback. They have Jared Goff, and they love Jared Goff because they're from Detroit. They have no interest in a quarterback. Okay. You can't trade him a quarterback. Okay. Their wide receiver core is weak. Their number 2 wide receiver is Khalil Shakir because they spent all their draft capital early on running backs. Are they able or willing to trade you Davante Adams if their number 1 wide receiver then becomes Khalil Shakir? They can't do that. It just doesn't work. Okay. Maybe you've got Kelsey and Andrews because someone dropped Andrews off the waiver wire, right? So you got Kelsey and Andrews. You want to trade them, one of those guys, but they've got Evan Ingram. That doesn't work. They don't need another tight end. They got Evan Ingram. So the point being, it doesn't do you as someone looking to make a trade any good to say, I want Davante Adams. I'm going to get Davante Adams if the match between your team and that other person's team that has Adams doesn't fit. What you need to say is, I want to get a wide receiver 1. Let me look around the league. Who's got the best receiving core? Okay, these 2 or 3 teams. Okay. These 2 or 3 teams. Okay, 2 of them don't need a tight end, but one of them, boy, do they need a tight end. And again, I've got Andrews and Kelsey. Let's go make a trade where I give one of those guys to this team for one of the wide receiver 1s they have. You have to look at the trade from the opposite side. You have to look at the trade from the other person's perspective. You can't just say, I want Davante Adams. You say, I want a wide receiver 1. Then you find the team that has what you need and want. And then you have the team that not only has what you need and want, but you can give them what they need and want. So remember, you've got to look at it both ways. Too many times trade offers come in and it's like, is that going to work? And then, we end up in this back and forth discussion about what the trade, and it's like, this is not going to work. Like, it's just, this team is just not a fit. So don't focus on, I need Travis Kelce or I need Davante Adams. Focus on, I need a tight end. I need a wide receiver. That's a much better way to look at the trade situation when you're trying to pull that off. Happy to answer questions and comments and all that kind of stuff. I see tons of comments coming in, so that's great news. We'll have some of that in a few minutes here. But before we get to that, before we get to your comments for the day, it's time to talk to our man who visits us every Tuesday at about 30 minutes into the show, which is right now. Every Tuesday, Armando Mariscal hops in. Armando Mariscal, you can find at fantasyguru.com. He's in Discord all the time. He's on live streams on Tuesday night. He'll be on tonight. He's writing articles. He's got his Mind of Marsal podcast. Go to fantasyguru.com. Click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can then find this show. You can find One Man's Opinion with Jeff Mans. And you can find Mind of Marsal with Armando Mariscal. So let's bring him in right now. Armando Mariscal at fantasyguru.com. How you doing, Armando?
I'm doing good, Ray. And yourself?
Doing okay. So the storm, you're okay? Everyone's happy and healthy?
Yeah. We were lucky down here, so we avoided the major stuff.
Good to hear. That's great to hear. I know a lot of people weren't as fortunate, so we're glad that you were. Thanks for joining us again today. As we just said, you're with us every Tuesday. And before we get to the I told you so portion of the waiver wire discussion with you, I want to ask you about Drake Maye at the quarterback spot, because, Drake Maye went out there and he looked better than Brissett. The offense worked a little bit. There was touchdowns here. He used his legs a little bit. Now, of course, there were mistakes and there's concerns about the offense and all of that. But I got a lot of people inquiring about Drake Maye. What are your thoughts on Drake Maye the rest of the way? I know you're going to say he's not a quarterback one, I'm assuming.
Correct.
You're probably going to say he's a quarterback two. Is he a good quarterback two? Is he worth stashing if you're in a one quarterback league? Is he a must start in a super flex league? What do you think with Drake Maye?
So I think you have mixed results, right? I think he looked pretty good at times. I think he made some good decisions. He also made some mistakes, like you mentioned. He turned the ball over twice. One of them was a tip pass. Used his legs, showed his dual threat ability, right? And I think that was an appealing thing about Drake Maye going into the NFL. I was big on him when he was entering the NFL. I didn't love the landing spot. I do think that he's going to be a solid quarterback here. I agree with you 100%. Don't view him as a QB1. I do think in super flex leagues and two quarterback leagues, you do want to add him if he's still available out there, because I do think he's going to be a viable plug and play at times. He does get a pretty solid matchup here against a pass funnel defense in Jacksonville this upcoming week. So I think he's viable this upcoming week. There's been people that are playing Caleb Williams as a QB2 that he's on bye. So, or if you're dealing with a quarterback that's struggling, even in that same game, Trevor Lawrence hasn't really been playing great football. You might have a decision to make, right, between, and I'm not saying you're starting Drake Maye over Trevor Lawrence every week, but if you're in one of those situations where you have a struggling quarterback where you want to play someone like Maye, I think it's very viable in a two quarterback super flex leagues. In a single quarterback league, I'm really not going to add him unless I need to use him for a bye week replacement or an injury or something of that nature. I don't like to roster more than one quarterback in single quarterback leagues. But for me, he's more of a 2 QB or a super flex league option at this time. Though that rushing upside does bring some appeal from a floor standpoint on a week-to-week basis.
All right, let's move to the running back position. And told ya. No, I'm just kidding.
Told you. A lot of these guys told you.
Told ya. There's like I said it earlier in the show, we, for the most part, not everyone, like Tyler Beaker doesn't believe this, but most of us at fantasyguru.com say handcuff your running backs. If you had James Cook in the last minute, out of the DNP last night, oh my God, you just pivot to Ray Davis, you're totally fine, right? It's no big deal. You throw him out there, Davis gets his 23 touches, his 100 yards from scrimmage, everything's fine. But we know that's not how a lot of people manage their rosters. We know that Ray Davis is on waiver wires. We don't know for certain that James Cook is playing the next game for the Bills. So talk us through Ray Davis and what you're doing. What's his outlook the rest of the way? And how much of a mistake did people make if they have Cook and they didn't have Davis?
So I didn't think Davis was a clear-cut handcuff, because they were using Johnson as well there. But this is why we stash these kind of running backs, to see when the opportunity does become available for them, what happens in that instance. And we saw firsthand now what happens if Cook is out. They are going to lean on Davis, and that's why you stash these kind of running backs. And this is why we continue to say, he hasn't done anything yet. You never drafted Davis to get production right away, right? We didn't draft. We're going to talk about Guerendo. We're going to talk about Vidal. We didn't draft these kind of running backs to get production right away. We were always said, these are stash options. These are ones that you keep on your bench just in case the opportunity comes up. We see how they're utilized. Now we're seeing firsthand Davis would be utilized. I thought Cook was going to play this week. It was a division game, an important game. The fact that he didn't play tells me that he might not play this upcoming week either, right? So in that instance, I do think Davis is a must add this week. Whether Cook plays or not, I think he's going to carve out a role, though, Ray, because he played well. And, I think he showed up and he showed what he's capable of doing. So I still believe Cook, when healthy, will be the RB1 on this offense. But I do think that Davis has earned himself some more opportunities. Maybe that Johnson role that we saw earlier on in the season, maybe that Davis carves out some type of role like that. He showed us that he could catch passes in the backfield with that big 42-yard catch. So I think he's a versatile back that will carve out a role. And if Cook is out, I think he's the ever down back. He played in nearly 60% of the offensive snaps or 23 opportunities. I think that, the role is here. Like, the role is here if Cook is out. And when Cook returns, I still believe Davis will have, opportunities.
Armando Mariscal of fantasyguru.com joining me, Ray Flowers, as he does every Tuesday here on the show. And, this next one, okay.
I know.
Yeah, okay. Sean Tucker was spectacular, right? He outperformed Bucky Irving with Rachaad White being down. The obvious natural assumption, which is completely logical, is that Bucky Irving, who we've seen ascend throughout the weeks, is now in a 50-50 or better timeshare with Rachaad White. When Rachaad White's healthy, that's how it's going to play. Irving on the early downs, White on the third downs, and we'll see how it goes. Then we have Sean Tucker go out and have a big game, and we're hearing they're going to use 3 running backs. Like, it doesn't work. Okay? This is not college football in the 1980s running the wishbone for Nebraska. This doesn't work, okay? What are we doing with Sean Tucker? Because, as soon as this game's over, I'm thinking, all right, Sean Tucker, whatever. We had him for $1 and you're in a deep league, and who cares? Who cares? But now there's the specter of Tucker actually having a role with the Bucs. And if he has a role with the Bucs, Bucky Irving and Rachaad White go down because there's only so many footballs to go around.
I mean, this is a question when I'm asked about Sean Tucker. Do you want to invest in a 3-man committee? If that is the case, no, I don't want to be investing. That's an every week nightmare for me. I'd rather not be invested in that. I still think it's going to be Irving and White. I actually think Irving is going to start surpassing White, kind of what we discussed earlier in the season, where it's going to gradually happen. I think after this past week, I think they could lean on Irving. I think it's clear that they could lean on Irving. And I think White is the one that's impacted the most from this, because I think the fact that they have someone like Tucker being able to produce the way he did, I think this impacts White. What I think could happen is where we see, Irving maybe get 50 to 60% of those opportunities, the snap share, and then we kind of see the rest between White and Tucker. I really think this hurts White that much. So for me, I'm not adding Tucker because I don't want to be invested in a 3-man committee. If White were to miss more time, sure, you could be, you can make a case for Tucker being serviceable. Am I expecting these kind of numbers from him again? No, not really. This was a really weird game, okay? Like, when you look at the numbers, I think in the first half, I think in the first half they had 6 rush attempts. And then in the third quarter, they had 5 or 6 combined, and then everything happened in the fourth quarter. This game was out of reach. So I think that also has to be put into perspective of what kind of game environment, what kind of game script we saw. It was a very odd game when you looked at this backfield. These 2 running backs didn't start producing to the second half. So am I adding Tucker in deeper leagues? Sure. But like you said, do you want to spend more than a couple of bucks on him? Nah. And this is only on really running back needy teams. It's best case scenario for Tucker is he's part of a 3-man committee. That's a nightmare for fantasy managers, nightmares. For me, it's just deeper leagues, and outside of that, not too interested.
CMC is still working his way back. We're hearing maybe week 10 after the bye for the Niners is kind of the target date. We don't know that. It's not certain. That's kind of what we're expecting. Jordan Mason's got the shoulder injury. We don't know for sure whether he's playing this week or not. He could play this week for the Niners, right? It's still unclear. So Isaac Guerendo, who came in and, had the 99 yards and showed everyone with that 70-plus yard run. That's why we talked about Isaac Guerendo so much. He's one of the faster guys in the league. He's a big home run hitting type of player. What are we doing with Guerendo? Because CMC's lurking, and in the short term, we don't know what Mason looks like this week. So how are we handling Guerendo on the waiver wire?
I think he's an ad. I mean, I think this is why we were stashing him, from the beginning of the season. He's an ad because I think he's going to step into a solidified role here if Mason misses any time. These shoulder injuries are tricky, right? Especially for running backs. They're getting hit up top a lot. They're getting hit they're running through these defensive linemen, through linebackers, and they're using their shoulders to do so, right? And we saw he tried to get back in this game and he couldn't. Even if he plays this upcoming week, what happens if he re-aggravates that injury? What happens if he tries to get back out there and he can? He's not 100%. They have a serviceable player like we saw in Guerendo, someone that could break those big plays. I think he's an ad. You don't necessarily have to start him this week, and I think that's the misconception. You don't always have to start the players you're adding. I think if you're adding someone, it's just kind of maybe take the wait and see approach. Is CMC going to return? There's a lot of uncertainty there too, right? So there's so much uncertainty when it comes to San Francisco's backfield. The best thing to do is be invested in guys like Guerendo, guys like Mason, and kind of see how things play out. So that's what I would do. Would I break the bank on Guerendo? No. But I do think that you should go out there and, bid some fab on him and see if you can get him.
Guerendo or Kamani Vidal? Who you bidding more on? Because again, Vidal's another one of these guys that are floating out there. I've talked about Vidal. We've been drafting him since May, and we've been talking about that at FG. So this is not. But I know he hasn't done anything, and I know despite all of us saying over and over again, Vidal, people aren't rostering a guy that's not even on the field. I know it. You know it. Okay. He's on the waiver wire everywhere. So, what is Vidal moving forward? And again, Vidal or Guerendo, which guy's higher on your priority list this week?
So these were free agents in one of the leagues I'm in. That was last week or the week before. I added one week and then the other like right after when he was dropped. So they're both on my. So I would prioritize Guerendo simply because I prefer being invested in the 49ers offense, and I think right now Mason is dinged up. I'm not overly optimistic about CMC returning given the kind of injury he has, and if he does return, how long is that going to last? Like I am very concerned. So I would say Guerendo, but I think the right answer is invest in both, right? I think both are very strong stashes. Dobbins is not someone that has shown us that he can stay healthy. They're utilizing him a lot. Is there going to be eventually wear and tear? And if so, if he misses time, I think it's Vidal. I mean, we have Edwards on IR right now, so it's Vidal's the clear guy right behind him. And he looked good. Like he looked solid in the limited opportunities he had this week. He looked solid. So and we know the Chargers are a run first offense. We know that they're leaning on that ground game. And, so for me, I think Vidal is a very strong ad, so if he's out there, I prioritize Guerendo, then Vidal, but I do think both are very good ads. And again, going back to, we're not starting them this week. We don't necessarily have to start them this week, but these are guys you want on your bench.
Armando, what about Ty Chandler? The Vikings didn't play last week, and so, people might have forgotten that there's a hip issue with Aaron Jones, and we're unclear. Aaron Jones might touch the ball 15 times this week. We don't know, right? But Ty Chandler's probably available on a lot of waivers as well, and he certainly doesn't have the excitement of Guerendo or Vidal or Tucker or Davis, but he might have as significant a role in the short term as any of those guys. What about Ty Chandler?
I like the idea of getting Chandler for very cheap here this week. We know so Jones. I read he had participated on a limited basis yesterday. Like they do the Monday workouts and practices and things like that. So he was participating, which for me it's a promising outlook for his health going into week 7. They were coming off a bye like you mentioned. But the good thing about Chandler is you're not going to have to invest a lot because a lot of people are now focused on what happened this past weekend and not what happened in week 5. So I do like the idea of investing a little bit of your fab on Chandler just in case Jones suffers any setbacks or isn't ready to play this week, because I do expect Chandler to assume the majority of the workload there at this backfield for an offense that has just been playing really good this season. So I view him, whether you're going to use him or not, as someone you want on your bench. These are guys that if the starter is out, you're going to have to bid 50-60% of the fab or of your fab most weeks, right? So just stash these players. If you can afford to stash a 4-man bench, I get it. But on a league with 6 to 8 bench spots, these are kind of handcuffs you want on your roster, whether you own the starter or not. Like you want these kind of players on your roster because they could become very valuable. So yeah, I'd be adding Chandler if he's available this week.
Armando Mariscal of FantasyGuru.com. Let's flip things over to the wide receiver spot. I spent a lot of time talking to Davante Adams to the Jets. That means Jacoby Myers is the number 1 receiver with the Raiders. And then DJ Turner, Trey Tucker. Like, I know. But someone, if they're throwing the ball 35 times a week, like those guys, Tucker and Turner, look like the 2 and the 3 at the wide receiver spot right now. Any interest?
Tucker, I'm interested in Tucker. I know he didn't have a great game. I think he had 0 catches this weekend. He was targeted twice. It wasn't a great game. They did have a change of quarterback, so I think that it impacted his production there. But he, prior to this week, was getting pretty consistent, looks and opportunities there. I agree. It's Myers for me, then Tucker. Do I trust Tucker? No, not really. I think he's an emergency plug and play in deeper formats. Maybe that's a wide receiver 4 flex option. And really depending on the game. I think what we're seeing here is Brock Bowers just kind of to the moon, right? Like we're seeing it now, like the opportunities are there. He's going to be the primary beneficiary of everything that's happening here in Las Vegas with Adams out. I think he saw 8-9 targets this past weekend. He's someone that's going to see 8 to 9 targets on a week-to-week basis here on a team that really we're going to see, playing from behind often, I think. And we saw more 2 tight end sets as well. We saw them utilize multiple tight ends throughout the game. So Turner, I'm not interested in. Tucker, Myers is going to be the guy that I think once he's healthy is going to operate as that number one and maybe give us a pretty decent floor in PPR formats. But it's just an offense that I'm not overly excited about outside of Bowers.
Armando, we're always excited about the Packers offense because it's a couple touchdown passes every week for Jordan Love, if not more. He threw 4 last week. Dobbs had the suspension. He returns, scores 2 touchdowns. So if he's on the waiver wire, and he likely is in a lot of leagues, what are we doing with Romeo Dobbs? Remembering that he saw 4 targets in this game, and that one of the touchdowns he scored was a ball that Jordan Love literally just hucked up, and the defensive back had no idea where it was. So that could have easily been a 1-catch or 2-catch, 10-yard touchdown effort, and maybe be looking at him differently. But what are we doing with Romeo Dobbs?
It was a little squeaky wheel action last week for Dobbs, huh? Look, like you mentioned, he had 4 targets, and Jayden Reed is the primary target option here on this offense. You have Kraft, you have Watson, Wicks is dinged up now, but you have so many players. You have Jacobs that catches passes out of the backfield. For me, it's going to be week-to-week volatility. I do think Dobbs is that number 2 receiver. He's going to be their primary outside receiver with Reed working on the slot. But I do think that he's going to be very touchdown dependent, right? And you said it. They spread the ball out there a lot. Watson, I think, had 4 targets as well. Kraft had 4 targets as well. These players had an equal amount of targets. The one that dominated the targets was Reed. So if he's out there, I'm adding him, but I don't view him as anything more than a flex play, a bye week fill-in, an injury fill-in, and one that, might be very touchdown dependent. Now, he does account for 17% of the red zone target shares there in Green Bay. So he is someone that Love kind of looks to in the red zone. So there is touchdown upside. But again, if you're not getting touchdowns, you're probably not getting great production from Dobbs on a week-to-week basis.
Before we hit some of the comments in the chat room, Armando, final question for you. I asked you about Drake Maye earlier. You broke him down. What about Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry? Henry, because obviously the tight end position is so volatile. And then Douglas, who is obviously their number 1 pass catcher. And he's had a couple of nice weeks in a row here. What are your thoughts with Douglas and Henry of the Patriots?
Yeah, it was really good to see Douglas get 30% of the target share this past weekend, with Maye's first start. He had 9 targets there. So I think if he's available, again, another player that you can look at as a bye week fill-in, a flex option in PPR format, someone that if you're dealing with injuries at the receiver position, makes a lot of sense. Is he someone that I want to go ahead and plug in and play each and every week? No, probably not. But he does have a good matchup this weekend against Jacksonville there. Like I mentioned before, a pass funnel defense there. So I think he's serviceable if you're dealing with buyer injuries this week. And then when you look at Henry, he scored his first touchdown of the season. But we go back to he wasn't targeted a ton, right? It was 4 targets for him. And then when you look at the rest of this group, there was 9 players with at least 1 target for New England. All right. They're spreading the ball out outside of Douglas, where he had 9 targets. It was 4, 3, 2, they were throwing the ball all over the place. Do I think Hunter Henry can we count on him more with Maye under center? Yes, because I think Maye is a better quarterback than Brissett is at this point. But now all of a sudden, do I think he's going to give us a safe week-to-week floor? No, I still think he's the same volatile tight end that he was going into last week. So for me, it really depends on your tight end situation. If you have someone like Mark Andrews, if you have someone like Isaiah Likely, you're looking at swaps. That's kind of what you're doing. These are all guys who offer very unstable floors on a week-to-week basis, and it's a matter of matchup, game script, game environment, really how we're going to be able to decide which one of these to start. So I do like him, but am I going to start him? Do I feel comfortable starting him every week? No, I don't, Ray.
Marsal, Ray Flowers of fantasyguru.com. Lots of questions been coming in the last couple of weeks about trades. Davante Adams. What do we do? What about Tyreek Hill? When's Tua coming back? What do we do? Jim C says, let's pile on. Let's do it. Jim C's got a question here. Offered Tyreek Hill for Davante Adams in a PPR league. Now, he already has DK Metcalf, Juju, Brian Thomas, Davante Adams, and Khalil Shakir, as well as Worthy. So it's a good receiving core. Hill and Adams, we know what they are if everything is right. Seems like everything's about to get right for Adams. We still don't know when Tua is back. Do you take Hill for Adams, or do you just hold Adams?
I'm holding Adams here. I got asked this in Discord earlier. I don't think it was Jim. I know Jim's so shout out to Jim there. But I'm holding here because Tua is expected to return in week 8, right? But one more big hit, and it's just what happens? Like, I'm so terrified of that, right? And now Adams is finally going into a much better situation than he was at Las Vegas. At the end of the day, I know he's going to be sharing, the workload there and the passing game with Garrett Wilson. I understand that, but this is still him and his man, his boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's him and Aaron Rodgers. These guys are friends. They have that chemistry. We don't have to wait for the chemistry. So I would hold Adams in this situation.
Forrest Ella asked a question: should I trade Tank Dell and Bucky Irving for CMC? I don't need Dell or Bucky. Again, people ask these questions, and I understand why they ask these questions. But the fact is, you talked about the Niners backfield. We don't know when CMC is going to come back. We don't know when he comes back if he's going to be a part-time player for 3 weeks. We don't know if he's touching the ball 20 times a week. We don't know if he's going to make it to the end of the season. It's like, if you're not playing Dell or Bucky, you can take a shot on CMC, but we just don't know.
I don't like trading for injured players. We've talked about this many times in the past. So this is what I kind of have asked some people that ask me, if CMC was 100% going to return and 100% going to step into the role that we know he has in the past, will the other manager be willing to make this trade? The answer is no. There's just so much uncertainty, right? And right now, if you have Dell and Bucky, you can get a very good return, that a player you can use right now. Like, you can buy low on Bree Hall. You can buy, you can, maybe the Saquon Barkley owners frustrated, like, after 1 week, like, we see people react over 1 week, like, things like that, right? Like, go get a player that you could use right now, not someone that we just don't know. There's so much uncertainty, and Dell's going to be serviceable for the next month, right? Like, with Nico Collins out, like, he's going to be very serviceable for the next month. So I don't like making this trade here. I'm holding down Bucky, and if I'm going to trade away those players, I'm looking for a better return.
Aaron R. is in an 8-team league. It's non-PPR, so very shallow league. He's got a question. He's got Jordan Love and Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, and he's wondering, should he keep Mahomes at this point, or should he drop Mahomes for a player like Zay Flowers? Zay Flowers, the huge game, the 9 catches, 130 yards. Now, remember, this is non-PPR, which dings Flowers a little bit. And Mahomes, I hate dropping Mahomes, but in an 8-team league, I guess the question really boils down to, do you trust Mahomes or Love the rest of the way as your starting quarterback? And then we decide whether to do the move.
I think you're viewing 2 top 10 quarterbacks moving forward, right? I think Mahomes is that. I think Love is that. I would probably hang on to Love here, but I think you're splitting hairs. It's really a matter of which one do you prefer as a manager, which one do you feel more comfortable. I think Love has displayed what he's capable of doing. I don't think we've seen the best of Mahomes yet. I think he will get better as the season progresses, but this is also a team that might not have to pass a ton. I think they're going to be playing with a lot of leads, and we see them slowing it down a little bit. So I would go with Love from a fantasy standpoint, but I agree with you. I mean, Zay Flowers makes much more sense in a PPR format than in a standard league setting. So for me, I would make this move here, and I would add Zay Flowers and drop Mahomes.
Cap for Life said, hey, bro, I got offered Devonta Smith for Davante Adams. Another Davante Adams question. Do you want Devonta Smith or Davante Adams moving forward?
Adams. I'll take Adams here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because to me, I know Smith's caught 7 passes each of the first 3 games. He came back last week, scored a touchdown. They didn't bother to cover him on the touchdown, but he got in the end zone. He's a star in this league. We know it, right? But at this point, like, Devonte, like you said it yourself, and I said it earlier too. Davante Adams scored, I don't know, was he have 90 touchdowns with Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. I'm making that up. But Davante Adams might go to the Hall of Fame basically with working with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like you said, this is not a scenario where it's going to take him a month and a half to figure it out, right? So I agree with you. I think Davante Adams is the volume play. I think he's the better play here. And remember too, both offenses are going to have 2 guys that they can throw to. Devonta Smith is the 2, right? He's behind A.J. Brown. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think there's a scenario where Garrett Wilson's not behind Davante Adams, if that matters at all to you there.
Or 50-50 at worst, right? Like, right. I think 50-50 at worst. So between Lazard and Wilson, they were averaging, it was 18 targets per game, right? 11.2 for Wilson, 6.8 for Lazard. This was going into this past week. We could see 9 and 9. We could see some weeks 8 and 10. Like, I think that's going to be very, very feasible. So you're looking at 2 top 24 receivers here. I don't like making those kind of swaps.
Big Breakfast got a Superflex Dynasty trade. Derrick Henry or Brandon Ayuk? We don't have a lot of information. We can't get more information. We don't have time for it here on the show. So we don't know anything about context or whatever. Henry at the end of his career, still a star. Ayuk at the middle of his career. He thinks he's a star. I don't know, Ayuk or Henry. I mean, with the way the running back position is and the fact I can get 20 touches a week from a guy who's on pace for 2,400 rushing yards or whatever this year, like, I'm not that inclined to trade Henry for a guy in Brandon Ayuk who's overvalued and overpaid in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean,
it's team context though, right?
Yeah. In a vacuum, if you're trying to win this season, like right now, I would go Henry because of what you said. But in a dynasty league, I'd rather be invested in Ayuk than Derrick Henry at this stages of their career.
Matt B says, and this back to the running back situation, PPR league, Vidal or Ray Davis? Matt doesn't have J.K. Dobbins or James Cook, but he's just wondering the question we get every single week about the backup running back. Here it is. Vidal or Ray Davis for you off the waiver wire, Armando?
I will go with Davis.
Okay. Yeah,
I will go with Davis.
Sean H. has, as a Kamara owner, I need to add Kendry Miller, but I also want to add Ray Davis and Guerendo. If you own Kamara like Sean does, I mean, Jamal Williams barely saw the field last week. So everyone thought it was, Kendry Miller didn't play, but Jamal Williams still barely even saw the field. He had 2 touches. I don't think he had 9 snaps or something stupid. Is it Kendry Miller as the backup there to Kamara? And though we preach cuffing, because Kamara is an aging player, he's dealt with some bumps and bruises already. He's got a track record of missing games. Do you go Kendry Miller or do you add Guerendo or Davis instead?
I would still add Davis here. We can't forget Miller was in the doghouse with this coaching staff before he got injured. So I don't know. I do think he is the handcuff, but I don't necessarily think that's going to turn into the kind of volume that Kamara is getting. So I would still add Davis, but if you have the roster and bench spots to add multiple of these guys, I would strongly consider doing so.
Tony T says the following: what do you make of the Indianapolis backfield since they lie about injuries like the 49ers? I don't know that anyone lies about injuries. Jeff Mans, you hate the Niners and you always say they lie, so everyone thinks that. Maybe they lied about Christian McCaffrey. Okay, I don't know. Maybe they did. The Indianapolis Colts did. I don't think they lied. I think the media lied. Like that Michael Pittman thing was bizarre last week. He hurts his back. He's not going to play. Then he's headed potentially to IR. Then he plays. Then Pittman himself comes out after the game and says, I still might end up on the IR. Like this whole thing is, so I don't know who's lying about what. But the question is valid. Taylor's got the ankle issue. We're not certain he's going to play. Trey Sermon was good in week 1 because he caught 6 passes and scored. Didn't do anything, but he was good in his first starting effort because of the 6 catches and the touchdown. Didn't do anything yesterday or on the weekend at all. Did nothing, which is not a big surprise. What are we doing there with the backfield? Obviously, it's Taylor when he's healthy, and it's Taylor to the moon. Trey Sermon startable if Taylor misses another game?
It's very situational on your backfield. Like if you're looking for someone who's going to get opportunities but offers a really, really low flow, we've seen. And you mentioned he got bailed out by the receptions and touchdown the week prior. I don't trust Sermon. I don't trust Sermon. I wouldn't want to count on Sermon. Like I would rather go elsewhere at the running back position. Obviously, even like if White came back, I would rather start Bucky Irving over Sermon. Like even with White healthy, like that's kind of where I'm at with. I just don't trust him. For me, he's an emergency plug and play just because he's getting opportunities, but I don't want to count on him.
Final question. Greg M says, I got Fields what to do now, stash or drop. The reason this came out is, and this was the information that I was talking about earlier in the show that Phil Backert was sending me in IM. Tom Pelissero is reporting that Russell Wilson, who's been dealing with that calf issue and trending toward full health, Tom Pelissero is reporting that Wilson is going to practice with the ones this week and that he is, quote unquote, in line to start in week 7. So this is not official. The team has not announced that Fields is going to the bench. They have not announced that Russell Wilson is going to be the starter, but Tom Pelissero, is not one of these random fly-by-night guys, right, is reporting that Wilson's in line to start. What do you tell Greg? I mean, if you have one quarterback and it's Fields, you have to make some kind of move because you obviously have to save yourself here. Jeff Mans was very vociferous about this last week. So again, if you've been listening to Elite Sports Show or with us over at fantasyguru.com, We talked all last week about the potential of Fields, being benched, so this shouldn't be new news. But what are we doing here, both with Wilson and Fields? Greg, you're going to have to add somebody just in case.
So if you have Fields as your QB1 and you've been counting on him as your QB1, you definitely want to have a plan B, right? Like that's just kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to him. We talked about this last week that it was a possibility. It was, I've been trying to sell high on Fields. If we're being honest, in my Superflex leagues, even in our CBS league, I've been trying to sell.
Send it to me. I would have taken him. Yeah, okay.
I don't think you would have taken it. But so it's a tough situation. It is a tough matchup, and I think that he's on a very short leash, even if he starts, right? So I think there is definitely risk when it comes to Fields, and I would be looking for a plan B. I think there are a lot of options out there. There's a lot of people panicking on Mahomes. If you can buy low on Mahomes, if you're a Fields owner, I think you could buy low on Mahomes here and maybe just say, you know what, drop him. I don't have to deal with this anymore, and I got myself Patrick Mahomes the rest of the way. Already had so for me, I'm going to get a plan B if I have Fields. And if you have a starting quarterback ahead of Fields and Fields is your QB2, you could cut him at this point and just add some of these running backs that we've talked about, some of these receivers that we talked about here.
The Steelers run an offense that, hey, look, is oddly similar to what the Falcons ran with Arthur Smith. It's not a fantasy bonanza, right? So if Wilson takes over, he better passer, obviously, right? More consistent passer. Doesn't have the athleticism. The idea will be, George Pickens now is going to do it. Maybe Pat Freiermuth is going to do it. Would it do anything? Like, are we now excited about Russell Wilson if he's under center for the Steelers?
I think maybe you get a little bit more of a floor from Freiermuth. And, I still think Pickens is going to be that hit or miss guy. I would still, view him as a volatile week-to-week receiver that you can plug and play. But I prefer Fields. Look, I know he hasn't looked great, and I get all that stuff, but I prefer Fields. I do think he's the better quarterback for the Steelers. And I think that we could see we could see them try out and see what happens with Russell Wilson, and they might go back to Fields in a couple of weeks. So just keep that in mind too. But I do prefer Fields here. For the Steelers, it is a tough matchup this week, though. Very tough matchup.
Yeah,
they got the Jets.
Yeah, and Devonte Adams. By the way, did you see the report that Devonte Adams is already in New York?
Oh, he posted something on his social media. I think it was his kid. No, he's been dying to get out of there. Like this is going back to last year. This is not this year. This is going back to last year. He said that there's a clip of him saying, I can't repeat it. I think we cuss on here, but he wanted to get out of Las Vegas last year, ladies and gentlemen. He really wanted to get out.
He's Armando Mariscal. I'm Ray Flowers. Again, you can find all his work over at fantasyguru.com. He's on the live stream 7:00 Eastern tonight. He's got his Mind of Marsal podcast. Click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page at fantasyguru.com. You can find that. He's got red zone work. He's got all kinds. Lay it out for us the next couple of days, Armando.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got the snap count and usage report will be out tomorrow. Then we got the staff picks, red zone review. We have the defense versus position charts. I have the Mind of Marsal podcast also going live Thursday. On Friday, you got the DFS breakdown, and then Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern, Chris Rose and myself, we do the DFS game day live stream there. Go pretty much game by game, discuss the entire slate, updated news, all of that stuff. And you mentioned every Tuesday night roster coach live stream. And then Sunday morning, Discord from 11:30 a.m. till 1 p.m. Eastern. We are in there answering all questions. It's a madhouse. We try to get to all of them. So be patient with us. But we're in there answering questions. Rich, Russell, myself, you're in there. Tyler, everyone is joining on Sundays and helping out. So join us that day and get all your questions answered.
Yeah, head over to fantasyguru.com right now and ask your questions. We answer them obviously throughout the week as well. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Sign up for the product. You can always send a note if you've got a question about something. You want to add some things together, do something fun. Support at fantasyguru.com can help you out. Support at fantasyguru.com. Thanks for joining us today, Armando. We'll see you in a week. Appreciate your time today, and good luck to you the rest of the week. And if you want, you can always send me a trade offer for Justin Fields in that Superflex league. You never know. Something might be able to be made there. We might make a miracle happen. You never know.
We might make a deal. Maybe next week we'll talk about that deal. Maybe if we do make a deal, we'll talk about it on there.
Sounds like a plan.
But thank you for having me on. Always a blast, Ray.
You got it. He's Armando Mariscal. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks for all the questions today. We appreciate all of that. We'll be back tomorrow as a show. I won't be on. Justin Fensterman, Rich Mileto. Tomorrow I'll be back Thursday and Friday. Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday, 12 a.m. Eastern time, 12 a.m. Pacific time. Wait, let me try this again. Jeez, I always screw this up, Armando. 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm a mess with time zones. I've always been a mess with time zones. Good to know things don't change here. 12 o'clock Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday, Fantasy Sports Daily. For Armando Mariscal, who doesn't misspeak, I am Ray Flowers, who constantly misspeaks. You've been listening to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.